Hello and welcome to the Voices of Victory channel. I am your host, Mario Leone. Today's episode is titled The Root of Dominance. And what this is about, you can decide if you want to go further at this point, is designing your mind to be high performance through metacognitive understanding. That is what today's channel is. Now, who's it aiming at? It is aiming at sports-based performance right here, right now. I come from a line of coaches. Okay, I'm a coach. My brother's a coach. My father's a coach. My grandfather was a coach. It goes lineage into Italy, literally. And I am no different, except my approach has changed from modern times, 2026. Now, outside of soccer, also martial arts, all types of martial arts. I love them all. I don't have any discrepancy between Tai Chi and MMA. I don't get that. I don't get that in the mind. I do both. I don't care because I love it all. Movement. It's all about that movement at the end of the day. And they have different purposes, different concepts. Let's go from here. Let's break it all down. So we're going to deep dive and do some investigation. We're going to destroy some of the ego, which is going to be helpful because it's going to expose the essence of high performance, understanding what high performance actually is. We could look at it in a very measured way. I'm not going to say measured to the point where we're performing calculus, but it's measured. We're going to look at potentiality and training. It's not just about practice. You know, everybody will say just practice, just practice. The way I look at it is if you are a pro, you did repetitive mastery 1 billion times to get to that point where everything is subconscious, where you're just the GOAT in your sport and you are just continuously moving forward with momentum. That's what I look at it as. Now, that being said, it's not just about the practice. We are literally gearing up our mind, our mindset, all the pathways in the brain. And you know what we do? It's not just about imitating the masters. It's not just about imitation of the masters before us and the trail that they blazed. That's not what it's about. We think it is. And like I said, the expert is really the novice that mastered it 1 billion times. He mastered the novice material 1 billion times. You take a good hard look at Muhammad Ali. Classic example. He was working on the 5 fundamental punches in boxing way up into his retirement. What does that say when we look at that? Because psychologically, our minds will get in the way. The fear of failure, imposter syndrome, the self-doubt, the root causes of the very things that will completely hurt your confidence as a sports player. That's what we need to understand. And it seems like it's so easy, right? It seems like it's so fundamental at the end of the day. But here's the deal. We have to go to the roots if we're going to find something and fix it. All right? What do I mean? Well, we're dealing with a human body, and the human body, to a degree, has a mechanical ability. We have the mechanics. And when I mean mechanical ability, I mean sports body mechanics. That's what I'm referring to. So in martial arts, you can think of power generated from the ground. That's the beauty of it. Because you're going to take a good hard look at elite performance, but it demands the root basic foundation, like Muhammad Ali, to be done over and over again. Because I've seen the punches with the knockouts happen from that one jab that was trained 1 million times, or that one kick that does the knockout. So it gets really interesting with that. And you can't be all body mechanics. We have to consistently work with strategy as well. You have to have a level of strategy. And you as a sports person are in constant unfolding, constant development. You're not fixed, finished, or complete. There is no end finish line. You are in constant development. You are unfolding every single day as an athlete. Every single day. So we have to look at those foundational, ground-based habits. They're not just rudimentary, and they're not just boring. And that's what happens is the intermediate person looks at the basics and says, oh, that's boring. And the ego gets in the way. But the athlete that says, you know what? No, those foundations are important. And they go back and they rework that. They rework that. They enhance it. Then when you enhance those basics and you work on those intermediates, and guess what? You start to completely dismantle those bad habits that are stopping you from being the best at what you do. And that is where you yourself can withstand the pressure of dealing with competition, is when you start going to the root cause of what needs to be worked on in your technique, in your style, in your sport, what have you. Because what will happen is our brains literally do exactly what they're told. And sometimes the way we speak to ourselves in the privacy of our own mind as an athlete, linguistically, we have all these filters. Just like the word don't. Don't choke, or don't think of the color blue, but chances are it'll be the first thing that comes in your mind. So when you tell yourself don't choke, you've already seeded your brain going down that pathway to set yourself up to make a mistake. Not that you are going to make a mistake. You've set yourself up to go down that road. So we have to shift more towards that can do, or in the process of. I love that phrase, by the way. I love the phrase in the process of. Because when you are in the process of something, you are in mastery. If I am in the process of my golf swing, I'm not right, wrong. There is no right. I'm in the process. I'm doing it. You know, we could evaluate after. We could develop solid habits in the beginning. Something I learned from a chef that I studied under for years, and I'll never forget this because I had years of struggling with perfectionism, and now my attitude on it is completely a 180. And I wrote the book on perfectionism, The Beautiful Flaw. And something one of my chefs told me that was really amazing, and it applies to sports. It really applies to sports. I asked him, I had mentioned, I was like, oh, practice makes perfect. We were working on a dish together. And that's where a lot of my nutrition comes out of, is that background. And we were working on a dish together, and I said, oh, practice makes perfect. And he says, He was a French chef. And he says, perfect practice makes perfect. And I said, what do you mean by that? Can you elaborate? And he says, yes, people can practice something wrong. You can get early habits, bad habits early on. And that becomes part of your foundation. And if we don't root those things out early, because you become what you repeat, you become what you absorb, you become what your mind absorbs. So we have to be able to go back and work on that. It's almost like deprogramming that one little area. That's why martial arts are sometimes hard when some people go from one art to another. They almost have to deprogram an old habit from their previous art in order to learn a new art. I've seen that happen. Not in every case, but some cases. So we have to consider what's occupying our mind and our mindset. I want you to think of it this way. We have the low 10%, we have the middle 80%, and we have the top 10, the top 10%. There's people that fall into that principle of circumstance. They focus on what's wrong. They avoid accountability. Responsibility is what you do. Accountability is how you speak to it. And entropy wins here. That low 10%. The people that feel that I'm just a part of my circumstances and I can't do a damn thing about it. The middle 80%, they may have a concept of considering themselves to be mediocre. They're good, but they know they have work to do. Not a big deal. They learn from their errors, but they haven't really had any feedback or somebody to give them insights to what's going on so they can weed out those bad habits or maybe even just improve in certain areas. And there are some people that will say, you know what, I'm not interested in competing professionally. And if they don't want to, that's okay. If that's where you like to stay, that's fine. But if you are a person, if it's in your heart to say, I want to go and dominate my region of sports, okay, in the strongest possible way, then we can look at it differently. Then we can start heading to that top 10%, the masters. The repetition is really mastery. You can say the master of something, the pro of something, is literally the novice who repeated it 1 billion times. That's all the master is. That's all mastery is. That's all the pro is the repetition of novice fundamentals practiced correctly 1 million times to where it's automatic. And then we load strategy in. That's where things get interesting. So with the masters, they maximize their growth by learning what they do well, looking at maybe old habits, playing with those, and figure out how they could perform in a way that's going to move them in a different direction. It's going to give them high performance at the end of the day. That's where strategy gets injected into the whole thing. So you can see true power really isn't the absence of fear. It is the total understanding and investigation of its root cause. Because you don't fight the opponent. You have to fight everything that's going on inside you. Your opponent is nothing more than a benchmark. He's a human being. He or she is a human being. They have information. That information can supply you with data for your development, as well as how to move past their benchmark, how to supersede them in a smart, intelligent way. And you fight that resistance inside of you. The more you understand, the more you investigate and go to the total root. That's what it's about. So our brains are awesome machines when it comes to conditioning and conditioning success. We look at strengths. We might take a look at every strength that we have, and for every strength, there might be one little area of opportunity. In terms of high performance, we have to look at the brain and that pathway and momentum towards actual sports competence, being competent. Something I've learned in doing fight choreography was that we have to look at confidence that comes from competence, which we can understand as repeated mastery 1 billion times till you become that pro. So the repetition alone is just the labor, but the repetition with a positive reinforcement helps engineer your entire mind and your outlook towards success. That is where it gets really wild. So when we look at it, we have to look at metacognition, the thinking of thinking. There's a difference between saying, I am angry, and anger is here. Anger is here. There's a difference between the two. Anger is here, sadness is here, frustration is here. It's metacognitive. Okay? When we set goals that stretch our capability, they don't mess with the nervous system either. They become measurable. And when we measure them, that connects to our accountability. You're able to speak to it. Responsibility is the work you do as an athlete, but the accountability is you're able to speak to it because you've measured it. That's where it gets interesting. So when it comes to having a plan of action, we could take a look at 2 to 3 skill sets a day. 2 to 3. I don't like overwhelm. I like to be like a microscope. We get granular on it. And we take a hard look over where we can put our attention and form a system that will develop that out measurably, even scientifically. And as you go as an athlete, there's going to be points where you stop and kind of measure where you are on the inside emotionally. How am I feeling right now? Am I upset? Am I angry? Am I under pressure? Like what is here? Anger is here, frustration is here, sadness is here. That's metacognitive. So you can literally look at your anxiety, sports anxiety. You could literally look at that and you can start to make better decisions. And if you can't measure it, you can't optimize it. You can't form a system to move you forward. So that's what we have to look for. And there's going to be little messages our body gives us. And we want to have some ways to use our brain that's going to bring our attention back to the present so we are in the heat of that competition and we are in the process of doing the work. That's what I love. So looking at performance under volatility when it comes to sports, there are 3 parts to the brain. The default mode network of the brain is real simple to understand. You have mind wandering, you have inner critic and judgment, and then you have task orientation or the actual process, to be in the process. So what tends to happen is the inner critic or judge prevents people from moving over to task orientation and task decision. And the mind wandering can create all of that anxiety through imagination rather than grounding yourself in the present. And that's where sports anxiety comes in. And the ego kicks in on this, okay? The ego kicks right in because anxiety can connect to control, the means of control. And an athlete that's got something to do as an actual task, they might focus on the mechanics, which is what they can control. But the ego, when that athlete is ego-oriented, they obsess. They obsess with anxiety over the uncontrollable. And they fall into that uncontrollable aspect. So we have to look into the true system and design of mastery. We have to look at the very root of things. Again, in order to solve something, you go to the root. If you got to get a cavity out, you got to find where that cavity is. You got to be surgical. Pull it right out, right? You don't have to pull the whole tooth, but you might have to drill it, right? So we have to build the foundation. Go to the root, go to the foundation, the deep research into the base mechanics, the core integrity. And one of my major mistakes growing up as a child was not knowing the rules in certain things. And then when I learned the rules, that allowed me, and of course you're just a child, so you really don't know, I must have been 5 at the time. So you learn. It's part of the process. You are a process. You are growing, shaping, and changing as an athlete. You have to understand the base mechanics of your sport as well as the core integrity of what it is you're actually doing. And it's okay to model. Yeah, there are people that want to model. You got to remember, there's there's MMA guys that will model another MMA guy. They'll model and say, okay, I want to be like, George St. Pierre, and they'll just model that out, right? And they'll just go and they'll just do everything that they're doing. But you have to understand that their journey is not your journey. Your journey is not their journey. Your journey is completely individual to you. You are not them. They are not you. That doesn't mean that we can't understand the mindset of an athlete. But if you think you're going to adopt everything, you could begin in the wrong place. Like you could spread yourself thin and not be able to be surgical in what you have to do. So it's okay to model, right? It's okay to do that. You're going to do it through 10,000 hours, and understanding that those 10,000 hours are literally, again, the mastery repetition that a pro already does. That's what I want you to understand. And this comes to being deliberate practice. We fall into those autopilot behaviors, those autopilot habits, and we're not deliberate. So having that high repetition training and using metacognition, that when you're upset, frustration is here, fatigue is here. Do I have a little bit more in me? Yes. Let me go a little bit more. Okay. You have to listen to your body. If you're feeling an injury, you have to listen to it. Okay. We have to be smart, be intelligent. Okay. So at the end of the line in this whole process, you have the flow state, which is my favorite. Being in that flow. Because you've trained hard, you trust your damn instincts, you understand what your instincts are. It's the muscle memory meeting your execution, which is fearless. You're like, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it well. And it gets to be fun. When we're actually ready to step into it all, the root and foundation has to be very strong, very firm, and the mind becomes fearless. So feel free to like, subscribe, share this with anybody who's in sports, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, whatever the case would be, and understand that in order to get to that place where you are the pro, you are going to repeat the mastery of the novice 10,000 times. Have a great day. See you on the next episode. Like, share, subscribe.